For a typical European in the early Middle Ages, the world ended a few miles from where they were born. Society was highly isolated, relying almost entirely on local harvests for basic survival. The economy was strictly managed by guilds, specialized associations of craftsmen whose main priority was keeping the community stable. They operated on the principle of the just price. A shoemaker, for instance, charged exactly enough to feed his family and keep his business running. Seeking excess profit was not the goal. This economic ceiling was heavily reinforced by the Catholic Church. The prevailing moral code taught that accumulating wealth was a sin, and getting rich was viewed as a direct path to damnation. When you combine an economic model designed for bare minimum survival with a religious doctrine that punishes financial ambition, the result is a society where economic life remains strictly tied to local needs, leaving little room for the innovation or growth seen in the East. That isolation finally cracked. Through centuries of religious wars known as the Crusades and the long-distance expeditions of merchants like Marco Polo, Europeans came face to face with the highly advanced Muslim world and the distant East. Returning travelers sparked an obsession with Eastern luxury goods, particularly finely woven silks and the raw peppercorns that began to flood into the European market. Along with physical cargo, these trade routes carried information. Europeans were exposed to complex mathematics, sophisticated medical texts, and foreign systems of credit, like the paper money used by the Yuan dynasty in China. But accessing these goods came with a massive logistical hurdle. As you can see in this map abstraction, Islamic empires controlled the vast land stretches between Europe and Asia. Every ounce of pepper flowing west had to pass through their territory, where heavy taxes steadily inflated the final cost. European merchants realized that if they wanted to bypass those taxes and secure their own economic growth, they had to find a direct maritime gateway to the east. Italy's role in this new trade network was defined by its physical location. On this map, Italy acts as a giant pier in the Mediterranean, connecting European buyers to North African hubs. Thanks to a milder climate, while German rivers froze and northern roads turned to mud, Italian ships safely traded year-round. The third advantage was its rugged terrain. The steep, rocky peaks of the Apennine Mountains sliced the peninsula into isolated pockets, creating natural fortifications that made it nearly impossible for any single monarch to march in and conquer the entire region. Sheltered by those mountains, dozens of separate urban centers broke away from the traditional feudal system. Places like Venice and Florence evolved into independent, self-governing city-states, building their infrastructure directly around the flow of maritime commerce. The people here did not possess a unique genetic talent for business. Their physical geography naturally directed them to become the central clearinghouse for global trade. To handle this new, massive volume of trade, the old guild rules were discarded in favor of a new system, the merchant capitalist model. Instead of aiming for a just price, merchants paid laborers low wages to process raw materials, sold the finished goods at high markups, and actively prioritized maximum profit. Operating at this international scale introduced a deadly logistical problem. Paying for tons of imported spices required transporting heavy chests of physical gold and silver across mountain passes swarming with bandits. To protect their assets, Italian merchants invented the bill of exchange. A trader could deposit physical gold in Florence, receive a secure paper document, travel safely across the continent, and withdraw the equivalent local currency at a partner branch in London. Financing these massive international shipments required huge upfront loans. Here, they hit a moral wall. The Catholic Church strictly outlawed usury, the practice of charging any interest on a loan. The merchants found a clever workaround in the concept of risk. Because sending a ship across the Mediterranean carried a high probability of shipwreck or pirate attacks, the Church agreed that lenders could charge an extra fee. They legally reframed the banned interest charge as a permitted insurance premium. By designing practical solutions to overcome medieval moral codes and physical danger, these city-states quietly engineered the mechanics of modern commercial banking. Controlling the Mediterranean sea routes and the banking systems that finance them turned the Italian city-states into the wealthiest locations on Earth. Florence generated so much capital that its local currency, the gold florin, eclipsed all others to become the standard accepted currency across the entire European continent. This massive influx of capital elevated banking dynasties, like the Medici family, from simple merchants to political heavyweights who dictated state policy and controlled armies. These dynasties directed their commercial profits into public relations, hiring the greatest minds of their generation to design breathtaking cathedrals, paint masterpieces, and push the boundaries of scientific anatomy. The desire for pepper and silk expanded the European horizon, creating the profit-driven business models and banking tools that funded the Renaissance and built the financial foundation for the global age of exploration.